Welcome to Booked All Night, the podcast for book lovers and storytellers who lose sleep over a good book. I'm your host, Jessica Mary, and I'm joined weekly by Leigh and Magdalyn Ann as we geek out over great books and the craft of writing them. This week we're finishing our discussion on Prince of Glass and Midnight by Lindsay Miller. I want to remind you about our Discord community where you'll get access to exclusive giveaways and excerpts, and have the opportunity to sit in on our author interviews live. Don't miss out on author events, especially when they're free. Alright, my little Libronauts, buckle up, settle in, and let's launch into, for the final time, Prince of Glass and Midnight. So in the back half of the book, August is more persistent about Ella's treatment from her stepmother, and I have kind of some mixed feelings about how he reasons with, like, not bugging her about it anymore. The quote is that he had tried a few times and it wasn't his place to do anything more. She could be right about all of it. All he could do now was offer an escape if she ever did need it. She's very clearly in an abusive situation, and I kind of want him to do more than just point it out. And it's not until that ending scene when they're calling Lady Tremaine out for tax evasion that he really stands up for her to Lady Tremaine.
But the thing is she's always like, every time he brings it up, she's like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. Just trust me. And that's the thing, like, if you have someone who's not willing to listen and not willing to talk and just are very stubborn in their way, like, you have to wait until they're ready to move on or do something or change something. Like, unfortunately, Ella was not. So I kind of agree with August. Like, there's only so much he could really do. You know what would have helped?
Yeah.
Is if he said, hey, I'm the prince, I can help you.
Right? That's my other thing. I don't fully understand why he didn't, at some point when they got older, just be like, hey, by the way, I'm royalty. And, like, I feel like some issues there would have been solved if he just kind of played with the privilege that he had, and he was just like, no one can know. And I'm like, but if they did, they probably wouldn't tell you to get off their property so fast without giving you some answers first. I don't know. It felt very passive.
Right, but I also feel like he could, like, as from a storytelling perspective, we couldn't just have August walk in, wave I'm the prince cards around everywhere, and then have everything solved for him or given to him without any sort of obstacles, because that doesn't really make for a compelling story. I think, like, I get it. I mean, it was a little annoying because a lot of the time I was like, okay, this is the moment where he's like, haha, F you, I'm the prince, now you have to listen to me. But it never really happens until, like, the very end when they're calling out Lady Tremaine.
And that bothered me, that he didn't even try to, like, attempt to tell Ella, that he was just like, yeah, yes, I work for the royal family. And I'm like, dude, just tell her.
I think there was a couple of times where he did, and then something happened, and he's like, I'll just tell her later. There's always another time.
Yeah, he definitely does try, like, at least twice throughout the narrative, and then there's the one moment where they're sitting down, like, the day before he's about to leave, like, the night before he leaves. Mm-hmm. And he's like, Ella, I gotta tell you something. And then that's when Lady Tremaine comes in and dumps soup all over the kitchen floor.
What a waste of
Right? Good soup all over the floor.
She just comes in.
Ungrateful.
And she's like, she had all the air of a parent who destroyed a kid's room looking for something that wasn't there and just went, clean this up.
Mm-hmm. How dare you keep this room so dirty?
There was also in this half that Ella succumbed to the forgetting and she forgot August, which was really sad.
Mm-hmm. It was so sad. But you know what I really actually loved about that scene? Other than it being so sad, but mostly the part where he kind of has a bit of a, like, relieving moment. He feels relieved. He feels almost happy at one point because he's like, oh, this is the confirmation I needed.
Yes.
She loves me.
That made it sad.
And then, 2 chapters later,
that
he
was
forgets.
Sad too.
But that was both, like, bittersweet and, like, so
really liked how August forgot, right? Because as we know from the first 10 chapters, all that happens is you wake up and it's a normal day. And he does. He wakes up and he's like, well, there's nothing in Fresney for me. And I'm like, oh no! So it wasn't some outside narration to be like, he woke up and he didn't know that Ella was a person. Like, it was like we were shown that he forgot, and I enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I also really liked the whole like so going back to that whole scene where she forgets him. I really liked kind of going off of what Maggie said. I I really liked how he explained it, like his feelings and his thoughts and just the way that it felt to him having been forgotten. I really enjoyed getting that like internal
Hmm.
look at someone who has been forgotten. And
Mm.
then with the ballroom scene, like the whole thing, because like he forgot, and you're like, well, this makes sense now because how could you not tell if it was Ella, like
Yeah.
the girl you love, like dancing right in front of you, like that was crazy.
That I really
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed the memory curse as a new element to the Cinderella story, because it has always bothered me that the prince is like, oh, she's the girl of my dreams, but I don't know what her face looks like, so I have to try this shoe on every woman in the kingdom.
It's also really funny because he touches on that too later on when he's in the Tremaine house and they're trying to force the
Hmm.
shoe on Drisella's foot. And they're trying to hide away Ella, right? And he goes, "Do you really think I wouldn't recognize the voice of the person I talk to all night? That I would just go and look at the shoe and be like, yep, that works."
He also very sarcastically says something to the Grand Duke about, like, what are we going to do? Try a shoe on every maiden in the kingdom? And the Grand Duke's like, yes, right on it, sir. It's like, no, no, whatever. You know.
I think my favorite in that whole scene is the reference to
Hmm.
fairy tales, where it's like Lady Tremaine is
Oh
about to
yeah, yeah,
start
yeah,
cutting
yeah.
Yeah,
toes off, and I'm just like,
yeah,
yes.
I was so excited to see that on
yes.
screen,
Chop them right
please.
off. I also really liked the chapter headings.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
They're all from musicals. Every last one of them.
Hmm.
mm-hmm,
And so there's, little stuff for everybody, right? Because there's stuff for Disney fans, there's stuff for Sondheim fans, there's stuff for, I'm sorry, not Sondheim, Rodgers and Hammerstein. And there's stuff for Into the Woods fans. Like, it just, oh, thank you. Thank you,
I
producer
was gonna
Rob.
say
I knew
Sondheim.
Sondheim
Yeah.
was one of them. I was thinking Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella, because that's what I was singing most of the time going through this, because that gets stuck in my head so easily.
Yeah, for me it
Mm.
was all Into the Woods all the time because I did lights on that show
It
back at
will never
Rowan.
be out of your head. Da 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 da. But there were lots of little things, especially in the back half. There were lots of little things that called to other things, and me and my education have a giant boner for intertextuality, and so I love finding these little Easter eggs inside of other texts and video games and movies and things. So it was fun little presents to find.
I enjoyed it because I felt like watching Cinderella again, and that's probably my favorite classic Disney movie.
Ooh.
It did make me want to rewatch a recording of Into the Woods. I am glad that we each got a different Cinderella related media mania immediately after reading this book.
I mean, that's fun though, right? Like, that's part of the fun of
And
literature,
I'm
is that we all have something. Although the three of us probably are not the best example of that. You take three theater kids and you put them in a writing program and make them read a Cinderella retelling, and I wonder what they're going to bring to it. But but you know what I mean? Like, yeah, we did. We each brought something different, although from a similar background. And I love that. Reader response is one of my favorite critical theories, although academia as a whole doesn't love it. I think as a writer, it should be one of the first things in your toolbox, because everybody that picks up your book is
Mhm.
going to bring something different to it. They're all going to be like, hey, I had this experience. I had that experience. I did lights for Into the Woods. Well, I did lights for Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella. And we're all going to bring that in and be like, oh, I remember that from that show. Or I remember watching the Brandy edition with my grandma in the living room. Like, each one of us has a different experience, and it's so fun to talk about that and expand on that, and I just love that. What I didn't love was the fairy godmother just kind of showing up and
Mm.
being like, here is an explanation. I liked that the wish wasn't intentional, but I also didn't like that the wish was not intentional.
Right.
I
Like there wasn't like a true villain.
yes.
Yeah, I kind of didn't like that the solution to the problem was just true love's
Yeah, that
kiss. Like, I mean, yeah, that's very, exactly what you expected of a Disney any property at all. But I mostly mean just like it feels like they didn't we as readers didn't get a chance to piece together anything because it feels like so much of the important information was hidden behind exposition we didn't get until the literal last chapter,
yeah.
and it just felt so unsatisfying getting to the conclusion. And the entire time I'm like, okay, so I'm trying to figure out how Natalie and how the Lord Moreau or whatever his name was are doing this. Okay, and how is Lady Tremaine involved, because she's clearly involved. She's the one link between a lot of
Mhm.
these gifts. And I'm trying to figure it out the entire time, and then the fairy godmother's like, haha, joke's on you.
She just pops up like a Korok from Zelda. Ah!
Ah,
Yeah.
you found me.
They put the shoe on, she just pops.
You
Yeah.
wished for me.
I wish she had more of a role to play, ultimately, that she was more than just a letter of, well, I can't come in and tell you about somebody else's wish because that's fairy godmother client privilege. But there was a wish, and then at the end with this lengthy explanation.
I really did like the initial letter that we got from her. Like, oh, sorry, I can't really tell you a lot. A wish was granted at one point, but I can't do anything about it. I liked that aspect, and if that had been the only interaction that we got from the fairy godmother the entire time until we got to the canon movie interaction towards the end,
Yeah.
or the implied canon interaction, because we don't get Cinderella's, we don't get Ella's point of view at that point like we do in the movie. But if that had been her only involvement in the story, I would have been fine with it. It's the ending
Hmm.
exposition that just kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah.
It makes you feel like she should have been kind of like sprinkled into the story just here and there,
Yes.
or at least the fairies, like allude to them a little bit
Yes.
more.
I was pondering today. A dangerous pastime, I know. And I wonder how I
Mm-mm-mm.
would change this. Because there were things that I liked and things that I didn't like, and things that I felt like if they had just changed one or two things. Like, I know we talked last week about how if we were going to change stuff, probably the first 10 chapters would be condensed heavily,
Hmm.
combined, cut down, and just like getting straight to the point. I think I would have preferred Ella to already have forgotten August, and that would have been the reason why her letters stopped.
That's what I was thinking when I was first
Yeah.
reading it.
I disagree on that aspect, if only because I really liked the fact that they touched
Hmm.
so much on her grief, especially around that time. And it was kind of emphasized a lot. We were kids, we were going through a hard time. It hurt for both of us in different ways, and that sort of was the explanation for the letter stopping. And I'm sure Tremaine intercepted some of them towards the end there, but it was the only reason that he got a letter from her.
Yeah.
But I really did enjoy that. It was a natural growing apart. It was a natural like miscommunication between the both of them. There was some tension between them and like their last communications together. And it was ultimately her grief that kept her from reaching out. Like that's such a common thing for people who are both in mourning and in a depression. Like
Good point.
you both want the communication and
That
you
is
also don't.
a solid point. I also really liked the scene where she forgot August. Like, that was appropriately heart wrenching.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Hmm.
What would you change?
I mean, obviously, the first couple of chapters, just to condense a little bit. I don't know if I would do like a major like truncation there, just because now that I've got the whole book under my hands, like I've read it from start to finish, I can kind of see how that pacing in the beginning affects
Hmm.
the end. I don't know. I think I would have wanted to spend more time with the sort of original characters, in that spending more time on the characters in Fresney, so that we have a little bit more interaction with them. I think I would have wanted to spend more in Fresney, because really I knew that the conclusion was going to be
Yes.
the movie scenes, right? The ballroom and chasing down the stairs and all that. I liked a lot of the pre-movie stuff more than I did the actual movie tie-in stuff.
What about you, Katie? Like, would you have changed anything?
Oh, absolutely. I think that I the curse should have been broken not with just August and Ella, but maybe by having or
Mm,
sharing that true love's kiss. Like each couple has to share that true love's kiss with each other to break the spell. Because we never see, I don't remember their last name, but Oliver's mom, because Oliver's mom
mm.
forgot her husband and he was away traveling. So it makes sense that
Yeah.
they did not have any affection towards each other or kisses, after she lost her memory. So it'd be interesting for him to come back. They kiss, she remembers him. And then I would also say
Sucks for
probably,
everyone whose partner died, though.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Gotta go kiss a corpse, or like, is it symbolic?
But with that one, like that had a point to it. Like Picard, like it's definitely, I think it was Picard who said he had this like huge like moment of reflection that helped August. So I think in his case, it's not going to be resolved. I don't
mm,
know. Just something like that. And then the whole Lady Tremaine thing, I wish there was a little bit more looking into the mystery and showing the clues that they found, like actually like showing them going into the
Mm.
ledger and really like finding that symbol and looking and piecing everything together line by line. Like I kind of
mm,
like the police detective work stuff in books.
Yeah, I would have really liked to have seen the resolution with all the other people who had lost their memories, especially like
Mhm.
Blaze and Madame Joan, where they had also, forgotten each other. Like Joan later on forgets. And it's this huge scene where, she's screaming in the marketplace because she thinks that there's a stranger in her house, and Blaze is just like, "No, you invited me over. We're having breakfast. We're friends." And they both sort of have all these lost memories between the two of them. And that was also really heartbreaking.
Mhm.
yeah. I think part of my other big gripe is my least favorite trope, which is, true love within the span of a week, and that's the span of the time frame for Prince of Glass and Midnight. It's a week because he's got 5 days. Then the ball happens. Then he goes back to Fresney, and I wish that there had been significantly more time in between things, even if it had to get kind of glossed over and be like, oh, a week later this happened. I really hate the message of we've known each other for 2 days and our love is so true that it has broken this curse.
But they haven't known each other for 2 days. They had a whole together.
Well, after they both forget, yes, they have.
Well, but then he sort of figures it out. Like August kind of pieces it together with like some context clues about forgetting and what it means for someone to have forgotten. And he also talks a lot about during the night where they meet in the ballroom, quote unquote, meet during the ball. They're talking and they're like, "Oh, I feel like I've known you forever," and they still kind of have like this underlying connection that the memory loss doesn't really cover, like doesn't take away from them. And I feel like that is at the very least sort of laying the foundation of there was more than just those 2 days between them.
Yeah, because
I guess.
they loved each other before the memory loss. So it's like they were, I guess, true loves, but they just hadn't confessed their love for each other. So the fact that the kiss happened, they are true loves. They loved each other. They knew that they loved each other prior to the memory loss. I don't see it as being true love for 2 days.
Mm.
I mean,
Mm.
Oliver and Martin, now that's a whole different story. You could
Yeah,
you can say
Oh my
but they
that.
god.
also, like Martin also says, like, "Oh, I've only known him for a few days. I couldn't possibly love him." And August was like, "Oh, well, romantic attraction then."
Hmm.
Like it was. I take it to mean that the spell or the the wish that he had sort of unintentionally cast was less about it was the effects is less that you forget everyone you love, or the person you love the most, and more of just the person that could bring you the potential happiness, right? Because that's sort of how it kind of mixed with his mother's spell, right? So his mother had made a wish when she was a kid that the fairy godmother granted, and it was a vague, like, I want everyone to be happy kind of wish. And
Yeah.
his was, his unintentional wish was, I want to forget love because I don't want to get hurt. And that kind of mixed together. But I feel like it was less about the immense true love that did it, and more that it was, this person could potentially bring me a lot of happiness. I could see myself loving this person a lot. Well, Blaze and Jones sort of had kind of implied romanticism, like, oh, they were at this nice dinner, they were going to confess to each other. They were also still friends, like very close friends. That I think kind of ties into that. Like, it's more than just the romantic love.
And
This is part of the reason that I really wish the wish had been intentional, so that there were some semantics here to argue over. Because all of it is so vague, and it's like, did he really wish that he would forget all love? And so that you can have things like the romantic love, this person made me kind of happy, or, was it something else? I also wish that it wasn't August's wish. I kind of wish that it had been like Lady Tremaine's.
yeah.
That it was like, maybe she loved Ella's father so much that she wanted to forget, and so being in the graveyard, she had said something. I kind of wish there was more of a twist here on the world and the characters.
Yeah, I had kind of been thinking that it had been Tremaine doing something intentional in a sort of attempt to manipulate the town, and also the Baron, who she tries to set up with Drizella, but he thought that she wanted to marry him, and it was sort of unintentionally leached out to the other members of the town. Like, she had only been intent on making the Baron forget his wife, so that he would be more amenable to marrying her daughter or whatever.
Yeah.
My theory was she was going around to potential like suitors for her daughters or herself and making them forget their love so she could weasel her way in or her daughter's way in, and then they still rejected her. So then she went on to the next person and made them forget. And then I was like, well, no, because she wouldn't want her daughters to marry a baker. So I couldn't figure it out, but that was like my first thing was she's literally making people forget so she can marry off her daughters.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, that is what kind of happens in the epilogue, though.
Yeah.
Because we kind of learn in the epilogue, which is more letters between August and Ella, where Ella's saying, oh yeah, so my stepsisters are now, kind of becoming better people. Well, Anastasia she's baking, she's getting involved with the baker's apprentice, and she makes a mention like, oh yeah, Lady Tremaine would absolutely lose it if she found out her daughter's involved with the baker's apprentice.
Yeah. I was actually wondering this about the presentation of the novel. Do you think it could have been pulled off as an epistolary novel?
I don't think so.
I'm dumb and don't know what that means.
Oh, for Katie and those at home who might not know what epistolary novel means, it is a novel told through letters and diary entries.
And like found media, sort of like Illuminae is a big one.
Yeah.
Where it's told
God,
mostly through interviews and letters and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think it could have. I think there is too much of a distance between the narration of a epistolary novel and the events of this story. I think we really needed to be in a character's head for this, whether or not it was August or not.
Mm-hmm.
I think that sort of closeness to specifically like a third person narration was necessary, especially when it came to scenes like them forgetting.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because I think it wouldn't hit nearly as hard to just kind of see the sudden removal of a name in a letter, as opposed to the slow realization on the reader's part throughout that chapter where he wakes up and it's a normal day at home,
mm-hmm.
and we realize that he's forgotten her.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think my least favorite part of the book was the letters. And I'm not opposed to letters and books and that kind of formatting and stuff, but for some reason it just did not work for me. I know it worked for, I believe, Maggie, but it just didn't work for me personally.
I liked it.
Yeah, so, and I think with the investigation and the piecing everything together, I don't think that would have worked in a epistolary novel.
See, I think if the focus was specifically the investigation, it actually might have worked.
Mhm.
Just because I'm thinking specifically of Illuminae in this situation where a lot of it is an investigation into some sort of mysterious event for part of the novel, right? As far as I remember, it's been like 10 years
It
since I've read that book.
Yeah, the whole point is like gathering evidence to take against a corporation, and that's what you
Yeah,
find is the evidence. Like you, the reader, find in space.
I think it would have been better if we had, because then we could have definitely gotten that line by line ledger. Like we could have seen the notations ourselves of the special marks that Natalia used, and
Yeah,
that would have been different. But because it was a specifically like Cinderella, not quite retelling, I don't think it would have worked.
I
I
agree.
think I would have liked to have, like, along with Katie, I think I would have liked to have seen the ledger notes
Hmm.
Mm,
as maybe like a little art piece in the book or special text or something, so that we could have seen that some of them were marked with this little 4-point star. Wonder what else could have been in there
And
like
I
that.
think I think going off of what you just said, Jess, I think if since you already had the letters at the beginning and the end, if you had put like ledgers here, maybe a note that he found there, like if there was more media spread throughout the book, maybe not just media as the book, but just,
mm,
little bits here and there, I think I would have enjoyed it so much more. But
Hmm.
also keeping in the
yeah.
chapters that they did, like, condensing them maybe and taking out everything that didn't need to be repeated or in there at all, and just kind of putting in the ledgers and putting in like the note that Natalie wrote to like Lady Tremaine or whoever her supplier was.
Mm,
It would have been more
yeah.
enjoyable and it really would have tied the novel together.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if we got like Mr. Picard's like diary entries, because he mentions he journaled about
Yes.
his lost memory, his lost love, or like if we got somehow like the memories from Oliver's mom or any of the others, but it's sort of like a in a sort of redacted style.
Hmm.
Like anytime that there would have been the person they forgot in that scene, it was just blanked out, and like we
Yeah.
could read it that way. I think that would be interesting for sure.
One of the characters also had a journal, not Picard, but they had like gone back through it and they were like, "Who is this name? I don't remember who this name is." And that could have been fun too, to have those little pages with like just like a little note, like, "Who is that?"
Hmm.
Hmm.
So Prince of Glass and Midnight is IP work. It's intellectual property, which means that somebody at Disney Hyperion went, "I want a book series written about the princes," and then they went to their agent friends or their list and they went, "Do you have a client that could do that?" And their agents went, "I have a few clients that can do that. Let me see who's interested." And then it worked its way back up. I've had a few friends do work for hire like this with IP work. Some people have had good experiences. Some people have had truly awful experiences. And part of what happens in this IP work is that it is not just the author's ideas. It's a bit like ghostwriting, except your name actually goes on what you have written, in that somebody's like, "Hey, I
Mm,
have this idea, I want this written," and so they write it. On top of that, usually that editor is also then editing that
mm,
manuscript. And I feel like the first 10 chapters really reek of over editing and trying to get things to push up to a word count so that it's, X number of pages, where the back half parts of it feel like, okay, like this really worked, this was really in tune, and then more of it felt forced into what needed to be there for it to be
mm.
Disney's Cinderella.
Yeah, the entire time I was reading it, I also had this thought in my head, like, okay, how much of this was the editors at Disney Hyperion want this specific detail here? How much of this is Lindsay Miller being able to be like, I want to write this specific portion of this story like this? And
Mm-hmm.
how much of it was going back and forth? How much of it was acquiescing, because you, as a writer, you have to kill a lot of your own babies. You write a lot of stuff that you want to keep, but you can't because it doesn't work for the story. And I wonder how much of it was forced murder and how much of it was acquiescence and how much of it was, yeah, no, I see that the story doesn't work this way. How much of a I don't want to say fight, because I don't imagine it was a fight, but I wonder how much of a back and forth it was between Lindsay and their editor.
Yeah.
And any other people who were involved at Disney.
Yeah.
I also kind of have a question to ask, I guess.
Okay.
So you know how with this is a set canon thing. These are Disney movies, and this is just a book series based off of it that is approved by Disney, basically. Do you think
Yes.
that novels like this are, I guess, sustainable or popular? Because I mean,
Oh yeah.
I've read some Star Wars
Yeah.
novels, and personally, I know a lot of people who love them and are obsessed with them and kind of take them as canon, even though Disney retconned a lot of them.
Hmm.
Mm.
For me, the Star Wars novels, I just can't get into them like I can the movies because they were a movie series first.
Yeah. So in going this way, right, because there are some that went book to film, this went film to, well, this one went grim fairy tale to film to book. But I think, yes, they are sustainable. They exist en masse in children's lit, right? You've got Goosebumps that
Mhm.
R.L. Stein writes, quote unquote. I don't believe that for a
Mm.
second anymore. There's Babysitter's Club, American Girl. These worlds and these things were already being approached by multiple authors that were sought out to make content for them. My Little Pony also is one of those things.
Literally any James Patterson novel.
But yeah, the Star Wars books, the Dragon Age books for the video
Yeah.
games, any book that comes out from video games is another one that just gets
Yeah.
into IP and work for hire. And
Mhm.
it offers this transmedia experience, right? Because if you only watch the movies, you get what is it, like 2.5 hours? Hour and a half, 2.5 hours worth of content and world that they want to put there. But if you go into the books, you have a lot more space to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want to build up the world where there are people that are diehard Star Trek fans, diehard Star
Mhm.
Wars fans, diehard Dragon Age, Forgotten Realms, Dragonlance, I'm naming a bunch and aging myself all in the same sentence. And then this world becomes bigger and more vast. There's more to talk about. There's more lore. There's more characters. There's more events that you get to see. I think it offers something very unique in that experience that, okay, well, you're a diehard Star Wars film fan, and so you're like, I'll go see every damn movie. But I also think that it offers a moment to exclude some of the audience in these particular cases that I
Yeah.
am citing.
Yeah.
Because there have absolutely been times where you go to the movie and you're like, what is happening? Because what
Yeah.
happened in a book, or it happened
Yeah.
in a made-for-TV series that we didn't get to see.
Like, I have only ever watched the Star Wars movies and like the first season of The Mandalorian. That is all of my Star Wars knowledge, right? And I am so lost every time. It takes away from my enjoyment of the movies because I'm sitting there like, I am sure there is context to who this
Mhm.
strange person is that
Mhm.
just got a dramatic reveal on screen. And like, my partner is like, ooh, that's Blorbo Jar Jar or whoever the heck it is. And they're important for this reason. I'm like, sure. I'm gonna try and actually pay attention and not fall asleep for the third time during this movie.
Did
I
basically Jar Jar the Hutt was what happened coming out of your mouth? What was that?
Kind of. I don't know. I was half trying to say a name, and then my brain only could supply Wizards of the Coast names like Floon Blagmar from the Dragon Heist game of D&D, because Wizards has a very great and well thought out naming scheme. But I don't know things. I don't know the name of this particular ship or this particular creature. Like, I couldn't tell you the difference between a Skywing and a Nat. I don't know. The fact that I pronounced it at probably also pissed people off. But yeah, I don't know these things. I'm intimidated by the amount of things I don't know. And it feels like
And
I can't properly enjoy anything because I feel like I'm missing a lot of context.
I was just gonna say, like, that's the thing. Like, the Star Wars novels are there's so many, and when Disney bought Star Wars, a lot of them, it's just like, yeah, totally forget them because it's not happening. And then they're just like, well, some of them. And then you have Filoni who like took a hold of this whole universe and is taking some stuff from the books and this and that. And so half of the books are retconned and half of the books are used in these new series. And it's just like, is this really sustainable where I have to go and read these books to know who's in this TV show and all that stuff. I mean, there's a character from a book that I read because I love Asajj Ventress, so I read her book because I really wanted to. And Quinlan Voss is in it, and he's literally only in like a couple scenes in the movie and one of the TV series, and you know nothing about him, and he's just this awesome character in this book. And I'm like, I'm afraid we'll never get to see him because no one really cares about Quinlan Voss because we don't really get to meet him in the TV shows or the movies. But he's just a really cool character in this book. And it kind of just, I hate having to go back and forth between the books and the movies and all that stuff.
While we're on the topic of transmedia and adaptations, either going book to film or film to book, do you think if someone has not seen Disney's Cinderella that they are missing out on any part of this book?
I think it might make it better for a reader who hasn't seen the Disney movie. Because I think you're going in this with a blank slate. You know, we went into this and all of us were like, oh, 100%, we're going to get the ball scene right when he gets back. We knew what we were expecting. We were anticipating all of these characters because we know them from this other media, right? And we get the entire movie in what's basically a chapter and a half at the end of this book. We get the ball and we get, you know, the shoe trying on scene, right? And I feel like if you go in with this blank slate, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't have any sort of prior knowledge or context for what's about to happen. I think you might enjoy this book a lot more because you're seeing it with like fresh eyes. You're not harboring any prior biases to what's going on and what might happen. You know, you don't know these characters. Everyone is new to you, and it's you're discovering all of these things. And I'm sure those. I mean, it's kind of impossible not to have any kind of knowledge of any Disney property. They're kind of everywhere. It'd be a little difficult to go into it that way, but I feel like even if your knowledge is Cinderella is a Disney movie, it's a Disney princess movie, you might have some idea, but I feel like, you know, you'd be a little bit more satisfied, I think, with the ending, with the, you know, the first time they call her Cinderella and you're like, oh, I get it now. And I think that the experience would be a lot more positive.
I'm torn because I absolutely loved seeing the movie scenes play out in this book. And just being like, oh yeah, this scene, and oh yeah, that was exactly what he said and everything. And it gave me the feels because again, this is one of my classic era Disney movie, and so it just made me happy to
Mm.
see that. But I kind of agree with Maggie, where if you didn't see this movie or know anything about it, like the movie is basically like this girl who has a sad past or whatever and is treated horribly by her step family, and how she breaks out of it is having a prince who has known her for maybe 30 minutes fall in love with her, and oh, that's a happy ending, true love. And she's, well, no, that's not how true love works really in real life, sort of thing. So I feel like the fact that they give it more in depth, more of a plot, more
Mm.
a reason of why this is happening and why everything takes place the way it does, and the ball scene and the slipper and
Mm.
the slipper is magic and made by fairies and all this stuff. I really think it is enjoyable in that way because you're getting so much of a story. You're getting like,
Mm.
okay, yes, this is not how real life works, but it's more realistic versus the movie.
Mhm. It gives her a lot more agency in this
Mhm.
novel than the Disney movie does.
I think it gives
Um,
both of them more agency because
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty standard, right? The prince doesn't want to get married, and so his parents are like, surprise! Party time! Woo! But I feel like there was a lot more fight with that on this time. And yes, Ella absolutely has a lot more agency. And at least has more character, where she's not just a victim. She has also played a small role in putting herself there because she's going out of her way to please this family, which gave them the door to be abusive.
It also literally gives Prince Charming a name, because he has been Prince Charming from in Disney's canon at the very least. That his name is just Charming. That's all he's known as the Prince Charming, and that's it. And we actually get a name for him in this book, and that's literally is humanizing him, giving him a character.
I'm going to look up, because all of the Disney princes do have names. In the French version, his name is Henri. He's Henry.
Henri.
That's right. Sleeping Beauty is Philip. Beauty and the Beast is Adam.
Yes, which I think we knew.
Yeah. It's just the Cinderella one. Snow White. Doesn't Snow White?
To the internet.
I know there is a name for Snow White's prince. I just can't think of it.
Yes, as producer Rob is also mentioning, this is the song that I couldn't get out of my head, was His Royal Highness Christopher Rupert, Windermere, Vladimir, Carl Alexander, Francois Reginald, Lancelot Herman, Gregory James is giving a ball. And I could not get that out of my goddamn head the entire time I was reading this.
Meanwhile, the entire time I'm alternating between On the Steps of the Palace or Agony, All Alone in the Moonlight.
Snow White's prince name is Prince Florian.
Florian, that's it. You're right. I knew there was a name. Snow White, I hate her. I hate Snow White, so anything about that movie, like listening to Disney songs in the car by a playlist made by my husband, I skip every single Snow White song.
Same. That's a wrap on this episode of Booked All Night. Click that follow button and subscribe to the show, share this episode everywhere you can, and don't forget to drop a review. We're a small corner of the internet, and every little bit helps. Visit link.bio/bookedallnight. Again, that is lnk.bio/bookedallnight from the convenient link in the show notes to see our other reviews. Find us on Instagram and TikTok, and join our Discord community where we'll be running all of our giveaways, posting excerpts, and streaming our interviews live. Join today, invite your friends and fellow readers, and help us hit our first goal of 100 members. When we hit 100 members, we're going to run our first giveaway. Booked All Night is produced by Rob Cook. Whenever you share an episode, be sure to tag us at Booked All Night Pod and say hi to our guy in the sound booth. Join us next week when we launch into The Fall of the House of Tatterley by Shanna Miles. Until next time, my little Libernauts, this is Jessica Mary, Leigh, and Magdalyn Ann signing off and reminding you all to stay booked all night.